So welcome again, good evening. Good evening. I'm Sally Morton, I'm Dean of the College of Science at Virginia Tech, and I'm just delighted to see all of you here this evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm thrilled to have you here with us tonight as we discuss the important topic of women in STEM. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce my colleague, Julie M. Ross, who is the Paul and Dorothea Torgerson Dean of Engineering. And she's led the College of Engineering for the last year and a half. Prior to joining Virginia Tech, she was Dean of the College of Engineering and Information Technology at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. The Virginia Tech College of Engineering is the 5th largest producer of engineers in the nation, and U.S. News and World Report ranks our college as the 13th in the country. Dr. Ross is a member of the Executive Committee of the Global Engineering Dean's Council, working to advance engineering education, research, and service globally. She's also one of the directors of the Engineering Dean's Council Executive Board for the American Society for Engineering Education. She holds a bachelor's degree from Purdue University and a doctoral degree from Rice University, and both are in chemical engineering. So please join me in welcoming my colleague and my friend, Julie Ross.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes? I think we have a couple of seats still. A couple. Raise your hand if you have a seat empty that's next to you. I love that we have a full house tonight. This is fantastic. Thank you so much, Dean Morton, for that kind introduction, and I am thrilled to be leading alongside you at Virginia Tech. I just want to share a few remarks with you tonight before we get into the really exciting part, which is listening to our panelists tell us their stories and to share their wisdom. But I want to share with you some of my thoughts and experiences of being a woman in STEM. And one of my earliest inspirations to pursue engineering before I really even knew what it was, quite honestly, was astronaut Sally Ride, the first American woman in space. And in high school, I was fascinated by her mission and her role. I was in high school when Sally Ride first launched her first mission. And it was a really big deal, and it caught my attention and my imagination. And I paid attention to her and her career from that time on. And as I got to be a little older and as a graduate student, I really wondered, how did she get there? Like, what path did she follow? And what should I be doing so that I can do something really exciting like that too with my career? Now, I'm a dean, I'm not an astronaut, right? So, we can question how that turned out. But I wondered about that. What's her path? How did she do what she did? And as I got a little bit older, with a bit more maturity and a bit more experience, I really started to wonder who mentored her and supported her along the way. So many of us here tonight have experienced being the first at something, or the only in the room. And I want to share some of my experiences. Through 9 years of undergraduate and graduate work, I had one female faculty member as an instructor. Not one in STEM, one total in 9 years. At my previous institution, I was the only female department head of a STEM department when I took the position in 2006. There have been no others since. I'm trying not to take that personally. I was the first female dean of a college there, and there have been no others since. And now at Virginia Tech, I am the first female engineering dean. But I am thrilled to say I am not the only woman dean at Virginia Tech. There are several of us, and I want you all to give Virginia Tech a hand for that. So let's just say I can relate to both the opportunities and the challenges that face women in STEM. And I know my story is not unique. This is something many women before me have experienced, that many of you are currently experiencing and will continue to experience long after I'm gone. It's not always an easy road, as you know. And there were certainly times when I've been challenged needing to prove myself one more time, of being qualified to sit at the table, qualified to lead, right? I think some of you have likely experienced that as well. And even though those times are fewer and farther between, for me these days, they still exist. It still happens. However, I remain steadfast. And I want to talk a little bit why that's so important, why it's important to stay in there and to continue to do what we do at every level. It's important because the programs we lead are more successful when there are diverse perspectives in the classroom and in the field and at the table making critical decisions. To solve the 21st century's biggest problems, we have to innovate, we have to be creative, and we have to do things differently than we've ever imagined. The best way to ensure that level of creativity and problem solving is to have people coming together from all different backgrounds, with all different life experiences, bringing all different perspectives to the problems. From my own experience, I know that our students are more successful when they feel supported and included in their community. That was certainly true for me, and I see it now today with my own daughter who's studying computer science. It's been the people who worked with me and mentored me along the way who have helped to mold me into the researcher and administrator that I am today. And by the way, most of those people have been men who have been incredibly supportive of me in my career. Those are the reminders that help me stay the course today. Women in STEM need that from the community and from fellow women and men in the field. I am so proud that Virginia Tech Engineering has an amazing community for our first-year engineering students. Hypatia is a living learning community where our female undergraduates live together and are mentored by upper-class students. Named for Hypatia of Alexandria, Egypt, the first notable female mathematician, the community hopes to inspire our female engineering students to ensure successful outcomes. Virginia Tech is making inclusivity a priority. And if you're following the university, you will have seen over the past couple of years a whole lot of attention that inclusivity is getting on campus. You being here, supporting fellow alumni of Virginia Tech and women in STEM is important. It means it matters to you, as it does to Dean Morton and to me. So I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate the panelists for sharing their stories and thoughts, and I appreciate you all continuing to push the limits of your fields. At Virginia Tech Engineering, we are also pushing the limits. You may have heard that we're pretty excited to be developing a new innovation campus just down the road from here. You know, we already span much of Virginia from Blacksburg and Roanoke to the greater Washington, D.C. area, but the innovation campus in Alexandria is going to create an even bigger pipeline of talent to this region and across the Commonwealth. It is absolutely critical that that pipeline we build is diverse. Absolutely critical. We know that we need the best talent, the best faculty, and the best graduates. We need fresh ideas, new tools, and powerful partnerships. We need to confront the challenges of today and prepare for the challenges of tomorrow, many of which we can't even imagine yet. By investing in the Washington, D.C. area even further, we're building upon our rich history and strengths with a bold and exciting vision for the future. And I hope you're all as excited as I am for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Virginia Tech. So, Dean Morton, let's get started. What do you think? You know, this is the part that everybody's here for, and that I'm so excited to hear the stories of our panelists who have just incredible experiences to share with us, and to hear your questions and to engage in the conversation tonight. So thank you all. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you. Great. you can see why it's such a pleasure to have a colleague like this to work with every day. Thank you, Dean Ross. So it's a pleasure to be here this evening, as I said, for this purpose of this very visible effort to showcase women's success in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM fields. We often hear about the lack of women in these fields, and that is true, yet the women in the front of this room tonight are making a powerful statement that it doesn't have to be that way. As a female scientist myself, and I'm a proud statistician, I agree with Dean Ross that diversity makes science strong. When we come from different backgrounds, different perspectives, different training, we can work together to tackle the most complex problems that the world faces today. We've conducted 4 of these panels, and each time I've been incredibly impressed with the wisdom and the advice imparted, and I'm sure tonight will be no different. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'd like to cancel, yeah, no pressure. I'd like to thank the Colleges of Engineering, Natural Resources and the Environment, the Pamplin College of Business, and the Virginia Tech Alumni Association, and the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences for partnering with us in this endeavor. The purpose of the Virginia Tech Women in STEM is to create a community to support, mentor, and empower women scientists at all levels across the university and in our alumni community. We will address issues pertaining to women in all disciplines, all colleges, institutes, and levels at the university and beyond. And we want to engage you, our alumni, in this event and in others to support women scientists at all levels of their careers. So now, what everybody's been waiting for, the panel. I'm going to briefly introduce each panelist. I'll just say their degree, and their current position, and I know as they speak, they'll tell you a little bit more about themselves. So we'll start with Christina Britt. She comes from the Pamplin College of Business. Her degree is from 2012, Business, Hospitality and Tourism, Business and Marketing. She's currently a manager at Blackstone Technology Group, and she's also the creative practice lead there at the company. Next to her, we have Kathy Wotecki from the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Thank you, Kathy, for joining us. She got her degree in Human Nutrition, Food, and Exercise. She is currently a professor in the Department of Food Science and Human Nutrition at Iowa State. And she's a former chief scientist and undersecretary for the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Research, Education, and Economics Mission Area. Next to her, another Christina Wick. She's from the College of Engineering, a computer science graduate, and she is Vice President of Engineering at Harry's Incorporated. And finally, we have, Candace Billing. She is from the College of Natural Resources and Environment. She got her degree in geography in 2007 and a PhD in geospatial and environmental analysis in 2011. She's a senior research geographer and director of outreach and engagement at the American Association of Geographers. So you can see we have a breadth of experience, truly impressive. Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to start with a question, but several of you I spoke to out there, and I gave you an assignment to think of a question. So your questions are the most important thing, but I'll start with a question just to get us going. So here's the question. What attracted you towards your field, and how can we encourage more female students or young alumni to pursue a STEM career? So who would like to start? Yes. Please.
Are we on? All right, it'd be awful if I can't turn on the technology in a women in STEM panel. Yeah, right. So for me, it's pretty simple. I like maps. Yeah, it's that simple. I like maps, right? I was like, oh, how can I do more of that? And that led me to geography. I was at an undergraduate program that didn't have geography, so then I was like, oh, I guess I'll go to grad school, and shifted to it and studied GIS and cartography. And I think, it's a simple answer as far as how can we inspire more people, but it's still a challenge, is those of us who are in it being more visible examples to those who are younger. We take on a lot of biases or just learn things from observation that we don't even realize. So, I'll go to a conference or see people doing a job or position. All of a sudden, I'll see a woman do it, and I'm like, oh, and I'll find that I'm more excited. And I'm like, wait, why am I more excited? I'm like, because I don't normally see a woman in that field, and I hadn't even really thought of it before. And if it gets me excited this late, later on in my career and inspires me, that's that same kind of spark that you could have if we can have, young girls, K through 12 schools, seeing a woman in fields that maybe, one, they didn't know about the field, and two, if they did, maybe they only had seen male examples in. So us being more visible, service opportunities like this, just finding opportunities even when you're working with the general public or you're not on the clock, talking about what you do. You never know who you're going to inspire. I mean, it could be a friend's child who you just tell them what you do and they've never heard about it before. So all of those opportunities that are less structured that we don't think about and just being more visible in your role, I think can inspire a lot more young women in STEM fields.
So for me, I had a pretty non-traditional route into computer science. Actually, when I was 16, I grew up in this DC area. My father did a lot of government consulting, so I went to work with him a lot, summers and weekends, and I started taking on contracts myself when I turned 16. So I worked at the National Archives doing data entry. I worked at the FCC doing web development for antenna applications. But one summer I got stuck doing paperwork and closing out contracts. And I found that some contracts were really late, cost the company a ton of money, and just kind of poor performance there from that perspective. And some were delivered really early, and the company made tons of money on it. And then, literally no lie, I watched a guy quit, or at least leave, and the office threw a party because they were so happy he was gone. And then I saw another one leave, and one by one I watched his team quit after he left over the summer. And there was a correlation between the manager that could inspire that type of loyalty and the projects that were really successful. And I became really fascinated with this idea of managing and developing teams. And so I decided I wanted to be a manager. And so I was like, well, what am I going to manage? And I was like, well, I'm decent at some of the software development stuff. So how about I manage software developers? And if I want to manage software developers, I have to be one first, which then led me in go to Virginia Tech and get my degree in computer science. So, as far as what I think too, I do think it's a lot around the visibility and giving back to the community, and really kind of getting I think the K through 12 is really a key age. I remember my daughter, when she was 7, came home from school and told me that she couldn't program anymore, and I asked her why, and she said, well, the boys at school said girls don't program, they're not good at it. And I was devastated, and I was like, that was enough right there to discourage her and not make her want to program anymore. Turned that around and told her, no, and we can actually be better programmers than the boys, so let's show them, kind of thing. But I think it's that kind of being able to touch people, share with your friends, the more non-structured ways. But I also think too, it's breaking that bias, giving girls Legos instead of Barbies and American Girl dolls, and trying to really encourage them to build, and that math is great, and to kind of encourage their passions in those spaces.
Right.
Well, I think the short answer is I went where the money was. So I've always been interested in life, what makes plants grow, animals leap, just curious about life. So, and as an undergraduate, I studied biology first because I thought that would be interesting. And then the more I got into biology, I realized I needed to understand chemistry in order to understand the biology. So I ended up getting a double major in biology and chemistry and applying to Virginia Tech in biochemistry, thinking, well, that would be the next logical step. And when I started as a graduate student in biochemistry, I did not get an assistantship. And it took a little while to figure out, that most of the other students had an assistantship who were all male, and I didn't. And this is 50 years ago. So I went around to other departments within Virginia Tech. I went to the biology department, the chemistry department, and something I had never heard about before, human nutrition, and was accepted by all of the departments. And the Department of Nutrition said, we'll give you an assistantship and we'll give you a full tuition grant. And you can study as much biochemistry as you want. That'd be fine. So I went with the money. And it has actually, for me, been the most wonderful decision because it brought me into a field that has large elements of human health, large elements of food security, this whole universe of really important, relevant problems to work on. And it's been a wonderful career path.
Great.
You have one.
Now it's on. Okay. So I have a little bit of a unique background, as you can hear from my marketing and hospitality. How did I end up in IT? Great question, right? I actually am from Roanoke, Virginia. So my parents grew up in very rural jobs, so I never thought about IT as a career field, honestly. Even applying to Virginia Tech and going, loved physics, loved calculus, loved science. Went in and took a hospitality class and said, I love people. I want to serve people. So I did that, worked at Walt Disney in Intercontinental Group, and then someone said, you know customer service, can you come start a service desk for me? Sure, I'm up for a challenge. Knew nothing about IT, had to teach myself Tier 1 through Tier 2 service desk processes with the state of Oregon. Was answering phones, helping them with their VoIP system. Learned a lot that year. I was still in college during the time, moved up here after, and then started working with the federal government. And didn't really know where my career path was going to lead me. So I was helping with project management, business development, and then naturally led into helping IT programs better communicate with their users, think about design, and the end user adoption, building products that the American people want and services that our customers deserve. So that's kind of how I led into IT. I think one of the biggest ways that we can help each other is knowing that we can do it. I do it all the time. I doubt myself. I feel like I'm not capable of the position. We are. And we have to test ourselves. If we don't go for that next step, if we don't push ourselves as friends and coworkers and peers and mentors, pushing each other, we'll never get there.
Great. A great start. Now, the questions. Who's got a question in the audience? Any questions? Yes, ma'am. What is a day like? Oh, do we need to get the microphone? Speak up. I'm sorry. Thank you.
What is a day like?
What is a day like in your job? Or in your life, really? I mean, your job isn't your whole life, right? Anybody want to take that one on? Yes, Christina.
So my days vary a lot. So I share custody with my ex-husband. I have 3 kids. And so some days it's getting up and they switch middle school and high school hours. So my middle school gets up and I have to get them at the bus stop by 6:30 in the morning. I'm thinking, 6 a.m. But so getting the kids fed and off to school, packing their lunches. My job is actually located in New York City. And so my employer so graciously let me work remote 2 days a week. So I usually 2 to 3 days. I'm usually in New York 2 to 3 days a week. And so on the days that I have my kids, it's getting on calls, having a lot of one-on-ones, strategy meetings. Today we had a 2-hour strategy meeting about expanding in Europe and where we might consider opening up offices and hiring talent. And day-to-day kind of work on getting all of our software components up and running new features. We actually have, so Harry's is actually kind of an interesting space where they started out a men's grooming brand, and they're branching out in the consumer packaged goods space, so they're taking on Procter & Gamble head on. And so the idea is they're going to launch 2 new brands every year for the next several years in that space. And they can be anything from like kitchen household supplies to telemedicine products. And so there's a lot of different technology implications from like shipping and logistics and distribution and software to support that, all the way through HIPAA compliance, where in Europe there's GDPR and data sovereignty rules and things like that. So every day, depending on like what that is, it could be a different thing that I'm trying to learn about to figure out how the implications it's going to have on our software systems. Sometimes I'm taking a train to New York and doing that. And recently, actually, I opened up a small office in Reston, and so sometimes now it's going to the Reston office and working out of there.
else want to, Kathy?
Well, I'm at a very interesting stage of life because I'm at this point ostensibly working half-time, and which my mother-in-law, my husband is actually sitting in the back, and he's joined the faculty now here at Virginia Tech, but his mother keeps telling me, you're not really retired, which is probably and he's not even working half-time. So I'm actually at this interesting stage where I can choose what projects I want to work on. And so I'm only working on programs I like and projects I like. And I've just come back from 2 days in Costa Rica, chairing a meeting of the National Academies of Science here in the United States for a project that is going to advise the Food and Drug Administration about how it can help developing countries improve their regulatory systems for food and drugs. So we had this wonderful 2-day meeting with the heads of the food and drug regulatory agencies in Central America, Brazil, Ecuador, Chile, and Colombia, along with most of all of the Central American sharing the problems that they have and the challenges that they have for this committee that I'm working with to gather information. So I get to choose those kinds of really meaningful projects, and that makes it really fun.
Great. Another
So I'm
question.
really jealous.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead. Please.
It's okay. My day is just very different from that. One day I want that. One day I will get that. How about that? Someday, exactly. My days start with a 9 o'clock stand-up. How many people here have a daily stand-up with their teams?
Ooh.
Yep. Syncing with our team, knowing what's happening and knowing the priorities so that we can go forward. And then it's a lot of stakeholder meetings. Tends to be more meetings than I feel necessary. I'm trying to kill meetings. Don't tell my work that. Secretly, just to be productive and get stuff done. But I think for me, it's also kind of what Christina was saying, making sure that we have a balance of work-life is really important for me, too. So making sure that I use tactics when I go home to also disconnect and kind of relax so that we don't stress ourselves out.
Thank you. I think we have a question in the back here.
So I always love to know what you're reading. What's your latest book? What's the thing you're looking?
Latest book.
And it can be trashy, it can be informative, whatever you want.
Okay. Anybody want to take that one on? Latest
So
book.
it's terrible. I'll read something and I'm like, what was the title? Like, I could tell you all about it. So I fall victim to Instagram ads. I'm sure we all do. Have you all seen that Getaway Cabin one, right? Oh, I went. And it was lovely, but they had a little stack of books there, and one of them was actually by the founders of the company, and the whole thing was about disconnecting. And I just sat there and I read the whole thing in like just part of a day, which I can't tell you the last time I've done that. But it was interesting because it incorporated a lot of research about how technology is, impacting our short-term memory and our connections with people and winding down at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day. So that was really helpful for me. And I mean, this is Women in STEM. We're all about technology, and it's fantastic, but it has seeped into a lot of areas of our lives. So when we talk about work-life balance, I think there's also the technology balance of being in the field and using the technology, promoting it, and then also knowing when to disconnect, in your personal life from the technology and the other kind of living. So living with technology and also balancing a little bit of living without technology. So I can't remember the title, but it's the Getaway Guys, and they wrote a book, and it's something about disconnecting. So.
Anybody else want to answer? Yes, please, Kat.
So the last few years, I've in around the Thanksgiving Christmas time, the New York Times and the Washington Post put out their list of the top books of the past year. So I put together a reading list of 10 or 12 books from that list. So far, I've been working on the Frederick Douglass biography. I got to chapter 5, and I had to put it down for a little while, but it's really good. And then I just finished Asymmetry, one of the top novels of last year, and I can't quite figure it out. So if anybody has read Asymmetry, we need to talk.
That's great.
I'm currently reading The Wife Between Us. It's kind of a thriller book. I tend to go from a professional development to one that I can relax and not know what's going to happen in the end, potentially. So that's one that I'm reading right now.
Great. We have a question here. Yes. I think we'll give you a microphone. Thanks.
So I think that you hear a lot that the biggest barrier, or one of the biggest barriers to women in advancing their career is that they don't speak up for themselves when they're talking about their accomplishments. And I think, Sheryl Sandberg speaks to that in some of her TED Talks. Women are less likely to apply for a job that they're equally as qualified, but a man would apply to it because he'd have more confidence. And what would you guys say is like the biggest barrier to women, or when promoting themselves, or what are some tips to go about promoting yourself in the workplace, and how to have those kind of discussions?
It's a great question.
The first thing I would say is don't say sorry. We tend to start a lot of conversations with, "Oh, I'm sorry. Can I bug you for a second? I'm sorry." We don't need to apologize. You're working with them. So stop. It's something that I try to actively work on. So during the day, think about how many times you may say sorry or apologize for something. I even do it in emails. I'm like, "I apologize. This was 5 minutes late."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, really hard thing for us. I know in my case, and with many of my friends, we've talked about how this sense of not belonging, or I guess there's a word for it, imposter syndrome. But to really try to conquer that, yes, you do belong, and you have a voice, and you can use it, and you should use it. So I think for myself, in talking with my friends over the years as I was progressing through my career, of being able to talk with them and to share that sense, and to realize that it wasn't just me, that everybody was kind of feeling that way, helped me to conquer that, and to have the confidence to walk into the room. Yes, I do belong, and yes, I do have something to contribute. So that networking, I think, helps.
I'd like to give you something concrete to do. Write down what you accomplished and what you're working on, right? And so you find end of year is usually sort of yearly time frame. You do self-reviews, right? And then you've forgotten a million things. You've got a recency bias, you remember some of the most recent things, but you've forgotten all the stuff that you've done. And if you're going to write it down on a regular basis, you should send it to your manager, right? So make sure that person is aware of what you're doing. And a good manager is one that will advocate for you and will take the things that you talk about that you're doing in your accomplishments and share it and socialize you. And so making sure that you're actually getting that support from your manager.
Good question. Yes, ma'am. Please. Sorry, we're going to give you a mic just so everybody can hear.
Thank you. I'm a little hoarse, so I'm sorry about my voice. But I'm not from VTs, so I just want to let you know.
Welcome.
But I am in STEM. I'm head of clinical at a biotech company, so I'm more in the bioengineering field. I do a lot of representation over my career and speaking in Women in Bio and conferences of that sort. In fact, I'm coming up in a meeting in Boston doing the same thing for biotechnology and for women in biotechnology. So, Mike, I'm really curious in actually talking about women in science and women in STEM and in this area. I just want to get your thoughts on what your definition is when you hear women in science, women in STEM. What is the first thing that comes to your mind?
Well, so the first thing that comes to my mind is the diversity of the STEM fields. Yeah. So at the time that I was at TAC, the Department of Nutrition was in the College of Home Economics. And when people don't think of a STEM field arising in home economics, but they are. Just the variety of the fields and the variety of the different kinds of problems that can be addressed through application of science?
It was kind of a carousel of images, and I was like, I mean, there was numbers and people in labs and people, doing programming and people in the field collecting data. I'm in geography. Part of the reason is I wanted to specialize without specializing. So I was in sociology and anthropology. It's like, oh, you study people. That's really broad. And I'm like, oh, you study everything that has a spatial component. Geography, it's even broader. So it's the same thing when people ask me what is a geographer. I'm like, what is it not? It's a number of things. So yeah, it's so broad, and there's a scientific aspect to virtually absolutely everything we study. So yeah, it's a number of images all at once. It's a great variety, and I want to be all of them at once. So yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you. Since technology is exploding at such a rapid rate, I would like to hear from you how you keep yourself current in the technology in your field. How do you keep up? And how important is that compared to wisdom and life experience?
Well.
Sure. Some ways that I stay up to date is I'm on my phone a lot, so I get a lot of newsletters. I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to things when I'm getting ready in the morning, when I'm running. Also, staying connected to peers, learning what their experiences are. So networking, lunches, coffee, just because I can't do everything. So they may be experiencing something differently or solving a problem that I'm trying to solve. They may have solved it before. And I think both are important. I think you need to be open to learning, but I think you also need to be, you're going to have to experience things. And when you go into something the first time, you're not the expert. And it's kind of what you were saying with the imposter syndrome. You might believe, oh, I don't belong here, but you most certainly do, or they wouldn't have brought you to the table.
Go ahead. No.
So I find it difficult with all the information saturation, right? And in the computer science field, there's just so many different things happening every day. And so I actually take a different approach. I surround myself with really smart people. And I'm lucky because the foundation, and I don't necessarily believe that every software developer has to come from a computer science background, but the fundamentals, like understanding, and one of the things that Virginia Tech actually did for me was really give me a good grounding in the fundamentals. And so I have the building blocks and an understanding of the building blocks, and so when problems do arise that I need to come up to speed on, I can. And so it's really about what's the problem that we're solving today? Who are the smart people in the room that, have expertise, but understanding too, what their weaknesses are and how their perspective might be tainted, and being able to collect a whole bunch of data points and leverage kind of my background and education to be able to pick the right solution. And it's through that, it's about learning. I find myself learning different things every day from that result.
Great. No questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is it on? Okay. My question for you guys is, basically I've worked for the DoD for 15 plus years. It's a very male-dominated society. Even the civilians tend to be retired military men. And so my biggest thing is when you are passionate about something, they start using other terms to describe you. How do you work around that, or work that without, it's a daily issue that us women in our office have to deal with. And it's, I just found out this week that another coworker of mine who's a lady was told she was the second biggest pain in the office. She goes, who's the first? So my question is, when you are passionate about something and you are well educated and informed, but you're dealing with the men and then they start using the other terms to describe you, how do you guys handle that in a manner that you just don't shut down or you rise up to it? How do you handle that?
Well, I'm in geography, and it's admittedly an old white guy discipline. We're working on it, but it's still very much that. And you're right, the terms are different. We're emotional, right? And how many of you got that one, right? You need to temper emotions, other people, yeah. So it's hard because it's the fight or flight, right? It's flight being you want to shut down, fight you almost want to just immediately argue back on the point. I just always try and center myself on the work product and the work, right? Bring it back to whatever we're meeting about, talking about, and turn that whatever statement back into the focus on the question and the product. And if you're there and prepared, and I know you all are, and you know your stuff, and you keep focused on that and proving that, it's not going to change them the first time, and it's not going to work every time. But it keeps you centered on why you're there, and eventually that's why you're all there. And hopefully they will turn their attention to that. But thanks for bringing this up. I think this is definitely something that a lot of people face.
And just to add to that, I think you're absolutely right. The memory came to me of a meeting that I attended at the National Academy of Sciences Beckman Center in California on the day of the Clarence Thomas hearings. And it was a typical National Academy of Sciences meeting with, about 85 people at this one. And there were about 10 women in the group, but these were all 10 really top-notch women scientists. And one of them came to me at breakfast and said, I have a rental car, and when we take the coffee break, I'm going to go out and listen to the radio and what they've got about on the hearing, because they were going to be broadcasting the hearing. So this word went around to the women who were at the meeting, and we all went out to the parking lot at the break, and we had a very interesting conversation, because as Anita Hill was giving her testimony, we all started talking about the experiences that we had had. And it turned out that all of us had had something similar or worse that had happened during our graduate school or work careers. And all of us had done exactly the same thing. Was, continued to do what we were doing. We hadn't talked about it. Some had found a way to sidestep or, get out of the situation that they were in. But I think that the times have changed, and the ability now that we have to confront these kinds of situations in the workplace with the kind of HR support that institutions are providing, we do have a better environment. But you need to keep the attention on the work, and also continue that networking, because sometimes you'll find out that it is a systemic issue and something that can be dealt with, and that your HR group should be helping you with.
Great. Dr. Rahman. Question.
Okay, I think the logical follow-on to that question is, what should men do to improve the environment for STEM, women in STEM?
I would say be more aware, right? Just having that awareness, and noticing, do you tend to cut off? Are you cutting people off? Are you, how do you develop that? I mean, I would say one of the things that we can do as women, I think we should embrace it, our passion, and use data and logic to kind of present our arguments, right? It's really hard, right? And so on the other side, that means men have to be more open and receptive. And so to the fact that, there are different ways to approach a problem, and there are different perspectives, and they're important. And then advocating for other women too. If you're in a meeting and you see somebody else cutting a woman off or discouraging her from pursuing it, call them out on it, right? Because the more that we have like awareness and that we're actually hold people accountable for their actions, the better things are going to get.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar to what you said, Christine. I think speaking up, being there, supporting that, if you see something, say it. It's not cool to do that. It's not, did you realize that when you did that, you may have made her feel inferior, or you may have done these things, if you see it as a male in the office. I think also going to the woman and maybe being like, hey, I saw this. Did you take it the same way? Because maybe she was fine or maybe she wasn't fine, and knowing that she has you as an ally is really important as well. So I think speaking up.
Thank you. My name is Maria Rodriguez. I have undergrad and grad in electrical engineering. And for most of us as women, sometimes we don't see representative women at the leadership level. Mm-hmm. So what would be your advice to women that do not see somebody who have broken the ceiling, and how would you encourage them to start pursuing those leadership positions?
Things aren't going to change until we have more women at the leadership table, right? Like it's not like we have to do what we have to do to get there if we're going to flip things around. And so like we can't give up. I mean, there's staggering stats about women giving up in STEM fields like really early in their careers. Like it's hard. It sucks. I'll tell you, there are days I've spent like hiding in the bathroom crying and like putting my face back on and get back out there and feeling like I was in high school all over again. But it's just like, I look at my 2 daughters and I'm just like, I've got to do this for them because I want the workplace to be a better place for them when they go into it. And so it's really, as much as it sucks, eventually it'll happen. Like it was really discouraging for me, like even breaking into the management layer. And I've worked at a variety of companies. I was at AOL for 14 years, at Amazon for 2 years, at PayPal. I ran Venmo for 2 years. Now at Harry's, this is the first time where I'm on an executive leadership team and we're almost 50% women. And I've never encountered anything like that. And so when you can find a place like that too, we have a choice on where we want to be. Right? And so we can start to be picky and choosy about what we want to do, and starting to seek out those employers and those cultures that really do kind of foster, a positive environment.
Well, one of the things that I found very helpful was being active in my professional or scientific society. And there are different kinds of organizations. Some of them are business-based, some of them are science-based, but being active in the scientific society, I met other women like me at my stage of career, and we were able, to be friends, to support each other, so seeking out those kinds of organizations where you can network with other people is really helpful.
I'll second that because I work for such a society. But it's true. When we have our annual meeting, anywhere from 7,000 to 9,000 geographers from all over, and they make new friends throughout the week. You have undergrads from all over meeting each other, but you also have women geographers coming together and having sessions and socials and that kind of thing. And, again, starting with that, sharing the common experience, the common struggle, and then you shift to, okay, well, what works for you and what works for you, and then you learn from each other and go from there. So, yeah.
We had a question here. Yes, ma'am.
I have one quick thing to add before that question. I think also with the associations, finding out what those people in those positions have that you don't have yet and figuring out how to get it. If it's management skills, join an association, start managing something, get those skills, prove it, and then people in your network, you'll start, receiving accolades for things that you're doing, and people will recognize that, and then that'll help you also make the case to your leadership because they'll see it around.
Good. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. So I'm curious, do you have mentors, and do you find a mentorship relationship useful in your career development?
Most definitely. At Virginia Tech, my mentor was the dean of the College of Home Economics, who took an interest in me, and my first publication was on a project with the dean. So yes, I had one really important mentor while I was a graduate student. And what's really nice now is that in so many organizations, there are really either mentoring programs or a lot of encouragement that senior level people have as part of their jobs, mentoring those who are coming up in the organization. So I really like the fact that, in so many different organizations that there are those mentoring, formal partnerships that are set up. And I don't see that so much in academia, but I think that has been becoming more prominent. But certainly within the federal government agencies, those mentoring opportunities are really they're out there. They're very very much built into the training programs.
I would definitely say I had advocates and influencers, and mentorship at different aspects. I think a lot of the things I learned throughout my career was around. I had one span 2 years where I had 7 different managers in a 2-year time frame, which is almost unheard of. I think I learned a lot more about what not to do from my managers throughout my career than having a mentorship relationship. I had an executive, though, tell me when I went to Amazon that, because they have a formal mentorship program, and I found it really weird to just go to this list. It was almost like I was going to a dating site or something, and I'm randomly picking names, and I asked him because everybody's supposed to have mentors and mentees, and I was like, how do you pick a mentor? I've only had these organic ones. And he gave me really good advice. He said, think about what it is that you want to accomplish in a mentorship relationship. And maybe it's not just one mentor, you're talking about 2 or 3. And so for me, it was I need to understand the engineering culture so I know how to promote engineers, because a lot of it's around socialization. And so he was like, you want one of your mentors to be a really senior engineer that has been at the company for a long time, that can then tell you about and kind of provide that guidance. And then I said, I had a hard time going from a first line to a second line manager. What are the things that I'm going to experience that I can start preparing for now when I make to the next level? And he's like, well, you want to find an executive at the company who's been promoted quickly. Not somebody who's gone through slowly, but quickly, because they're kind of thrown in, and so they probably ran into all the pain points really quickly, and they'll be fresh on their mind, they'll remember that, and they'll be able to provide you guidance around that. And so I think if you can think about what are you trying to get at, because it's going to be something different at every phase, and then seeking out people that can help provide that guidance is really, really important.
Question up here. I think we're going to have time for this question and that one, and then we're going to have to end.
Hi,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
Jan Wendt. I'm a 1978 graduate from Virginia Tech in international studies.
Welcome.
But I ended up working in a technology field for over 20 years in the international satellite communications industry. So you never know from your arts, liberal arts major, where you end up. So it's an introduction. Addressing the question earlier, so being in satellite communications industry is heavily male-dominated, and being international, I had to work with a lot of men, colleagues, bosses, as well as clients overseas. And it has a lot to do with communications, learning who you're communicating with, and communicating with was not just one-on-one, but who you're communicating with in a meeting room, for instance. If they're all men, know who your audience is, if they're at the managerial level or if they're your peers. If you know your audience well, you'll be able to establish yourself well. But I wanted to make an offer when you were talking about networking and mentoring. I retired from corporate and founded a networking incubator here in Washington, D.C., and we bring in a very large, diverse experts and people from across industries. And we're right here in Northern Virginia at Tyson's Corner, and we have 3 generations represented in our organization, from the C-suite executives who are automatic mentors, And we have the Gen X, if you don't mind me calling some of you Gen X, people who are doing their PhDs or have had their careers and trying to figure out what to do next, and also millennials, the young professionals that many of you are here. And it's an incredible dynamics because the millennials are getting automatic mentoring capacity from people who are experienced, and the older generation are learning how are the younger generation doing things now. So, and we work on a number of projects from across industries. So I just wanted to offer that as a resource for Virginia Tech alumni. And I've worked with the Virginia Tech MBA program, who also join our group, but I would love to be able to bring in STEM because we have engineers, we got people from across industries. And I think it's good you were mentioning about I find that a lot of people tend to be drawn to joining organizations with people with the same background, and associations of engineers, associations of nurses, medical doctors. I have found these organizations I designed in such a way that it offers a broad range of people from all industries because we can learn from each other outside of the industry, bringing my experience from being a satellite, surrounded by just satellite and telecom people all my life, and my career life. And in many respects, we think alike. And because we're from the same industry, so this organization is designed so that we bring in STEM, we bring in lawyers, engineers, nurses, artists, and we learn so much from each other, and we're able to build projects and businesses together.
Great. What a great resource. I think we're going to take, and you can catch her afterwards, Jan Wendt. Thank you. One more question, our last question, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your stories, and thank you for this opportunity, Dean. I'd like to try to end on a high note.
Yes.
So I'd like to hear what inspires you. How do you stay motivated and excited and passionate about the work that you do every day?
Great question.
Well,
please.
I mentioned I like maps. It all comes back to that. So I work as a geographer at day, and then I have a little side hustle. I'm a maker, and it's all about maps. I actually repurpose vintage maps into coasters, and I design cartography-themed T-shirts. And I know, but the thing about it, what I didn't expect is doing that, and then I learned to go to markets and sell to people and talk. And but what I found is I was actually teaching more geography when I was selling products than sometimes I do in my job, and I didn't expect to do it. I was just naturally doing it because I loved it, and so. That actually really has reinvigorated, the full-time gig, and which, you can be in a job, an organization that you like, but you can still get stuck in a rut. You can still get far removed from what drove you to be passionate about to begin with. And so if you can reconnect with something, whether it's volunteering in that same field but doing something different, and just find that just talking to anyone and outside of your discipline, and get reinvigorated. So, yeah, make mappy stuff, and it got me excited again.
Any other? Anyone else on that one, please?
For me, it's building things that delight customers or delight users. And so customers can be anything from an end user of a website to another team at the company. And so really being able to do something that improves or enhances their life or fixes a problem that they didn't even realize was a problem for them. I think those are the types, getting that feeling after being able to deliver that and getting that satisfaction of being able to help somebody is what inspires me.
Yeah, and for me, as I said at the beginning, I'm only picking projects that have meaning at this point. So improving public health through food systems. I'm working with the World Wildlife Fund on big data modeling project on protein demand and developing sustainable agricultural systems globally. So, I'm picking projects that have got real meaning, and that makes it really exciting.
For me, I think it's my team. I work for a company called Blackstone Technology Group, and the team that I work with is crazy smart. Every day I learn something new, and just to have a team that's constantly inspiring me to push myself in those boundaries and push each other and be okay to fail, and there's no finger pointing, really inspires me to go in every day.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for ending on that high note. I hope you're all inspired. Now, you need to know you got me in trouble because we went over time because of all your great questions and the wonderful answers. So let's end by thanking our panel. And Dean Ross. And I'd like to say a special thank you to all of you for coming. We will have time for further networking and food and drink, but we do want to end with some words from my colleague Debbie Day. She's the Associate Vice President for Alumni Relations. Debbie.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, Dean Morton and Dean Ross, for this great program. Thanks to our panelists, Catherine Motecki, our Christinas, Wick and Britt, and Candace Lubring for being here tonight. And thanks to you all for attending. We really appreciate it. This is such an important topic, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here with us tonight. This is a collaborative effort led by College of Science and Katie, who's been carrying the mic around and is leaving, but she'll wave, and Gwen Harrington, who is out there with our central networking program. And it's collaborative in its nature because it also involves, as you've heard, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Pamplin College of Business, College of Engineering, and Natural Resources and Environment. Truly collaborative effort, and we really we're so happy to be able to bring these programs to you. So as Hokies, this is what we do, right? We ask what's next. We push limits to make our community stronger and better. And tonight I'm asking you to help our university be stronger. We need you. As alumni, it's important to tell our story. Thank you all so much for telling your story tonight and for you all asking all those wonderful questions. And share what makes Virginia Tech a special place and how your own experiences have prepared you to solve problems and to make a difference. Connect with your local alumni chapter. Mentor other Hokies. No doubt countless Hokies have helped you. Do the same for a new generation. We want you to come back to campus, give a guest lecture, attend the tailgate, attend our summer reunion that's happening this summer on June 6th through 9th. It's a great way to reconnect with campus, your department, and much more. So support Virginia Tech by making a financial gift. Alumni and corporate generosity fuels research, teaching, and innovation. And when you give, it helps all Hokies. Likewise, please stay in touch. Make sure you can hear from us. Update your information by going to our alumni website. And thank you again for being here. I'd like to thank our colleagues at the Research Center tonight for hosting us, and we look forward to further conversation out in the lobby and more food and refreshment. So thank you, and go Hokies.